back to the second part of my lecture about the Staunton gambit in Dutch defense. So after d4, f5, e4, f takes e4, knight c3, knight f6, we are coming into the critical position of the gambit system we already started to cover in my previous lecture. So if you have any question, you can just look at the first part of the Staunton's gambit variation. And I would like to tell you that many old greatest players include the Gary Nelson Pillsbury, including the Adolf Andersen, including, of course, world champion Emanuel Lasker and Capablanca, and also Alexander Alohin. All were quite excited about this opening line, which was invented like many years ago by English strongest chess player in the time, Howard Staunton, who played this opening line in more than 150 years ago. So after d4 and f5, e4, f takes e4, knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5 and c6, f3, e takes f3 and knight takes f3. So Alexander Levin against Harry Pillsbury in Deutsche Congress played here d5, move which we cannot recommend because this weakens too much the position of black in the center. So white's knight is ready to jump to e5. After bishop d3, black already forced to play bishop g4, and after h3 to give his good bishop for the knight, after which also e5 and also e6 squares now. Really weak in black's camp. Knight bd7, long castling, queen a5, rook h to e1, long castling, rook e6. Now we can realize that white is having just more than a compensation, and Harry Nelson Pillsbury finishes the game quite nicely after knight e4. Bishop takes, d takes, queen g4. So of course we have not to forget about our bishop on g5. But you can see that black just totally frozen. All black pieces just cannot move. h5, queen f4, knight f6, rook e5, queen c7, knight takes e4. White is just got decisive advantage. In the game, just continue, rook d5, knight c5. So knight is going to occupy this e6 square, knight e7, knight e6, queen d6, rook takes d5, queen takes f4, knight takes f4, c takes d5, knight g6, and black resigned in a few moves. After rook g8, bishop takes e7. So just losing material with no compensation. After king c7, bishop takes f8, knight takes f8, knight e7. Just another pawn is gone. Knight takes d5, and black decided to resign. So in that game, Pillsbury just played positional way, so he just locked all black pieces, just not allowed to finish the development the good way. And of course just a long-term weakness on the e5 and e6 squares just decides the game. In one of the quite famous game between Emanuel Lasker and Gary Pillsbury, let me just show you this interesting line. Happened d4, f5, e4, f takes e4, knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5, and Pillsbury answered c6. So now in case of bishop takes f6, e takes f6, knight takes e4 and d5, black is getting quite good out of the opening, just with two bishops and no weaknesses on the king side. Of course, Lasker just thanks Pillsbury for this present, this e4 pawn, and just decided to offer the real sacrifice. So now we can see that Emanuel Lasker plays the real Staunton's gambit. f3, e takes f3, knight takes f3, e6, and now white is playing for the much better development after bishop d3, bishop e7, knight e5. So immediately intending bishop takes f6 and queen h5. Short castling. Bishop takes f6, rook takes f6, queen h5. Thanks to the much better development, now Lasker just wins back the material, after which he just continued controlling the position in the center and getting into the much better endgame. Black must play g6. Why? Because a move like h6 could be made strongly by knight g4, and white is threatening just to destroy black's position completely with incoming checkmate on h7. But even after g6, black cannot solve all the problems. Knight takes g6. So it's no time for black to capture on g6 after bishop takes g6. Rook takes g6, queen takes g6, king h8, and I believe just simply short castling. White's attack is decisive one. Queen e8, knight takes e7, queen takes e7, long castling, d5, rook e1, knight e7, rook e3, and black just cannot survive. Rook f7, rook g3, king h8, bishop g6, rook g7, rook f1. So game still continued just for a while, but the evaluation of the position is a clear advantage for white, of course. So black's bishop is still very passive on c8. White is continuing his kingside attack, and just very difficult defend. So Lasker at the end won this famous and important game using the Staunton's gambit. So even today, between the grandmaster, it's quite often I found that white using this old weapon against the Dutch defense. The game between Michael Prusikin and Heiner Wader from the Stauffer Open Tournament 2006 continues. d4, f5, e4, f takes e4, knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5, knight c6. So by the way, once again I would like to tell you that knight c6 one of the best continuation in that line. And after d5 and knight e5, so instead of playing queen d4, which according to the theory is the best continuation, queen e2 was played, d6 and long castling. So white played for the very rapid development. G6, knight takes E4. So white is intending just to play F4. Let's say after King F7, the game happening is F4, knight E7, and knight F3, and you can realize in such big difficulties black now. So E6 is a serious problem. Also, one just check on G5 is one of the knights also will be almost decisive. After bishop G7, Mikhail Prusygin just played bishop takes F6. And, wow, black cannot capture back with the pawn. Why? After knight G5 check, black or has to lose or losing the queen, or his king is going to be checkmated. Look at that. Black has 1, 2, 3 answers, but neither one could help. King F6, Queen E6 checkmate. King G8, Queen E6 with forthcoming Queen F7 checkmate. King F8, Knight E6, forking the Queen and the King. So black is going to lose the Queen for no compensation at all. So after bishop takes F6, black had to capture with a knight. But then knight E to G5, check. King 8, now white is just taking full control over the E4, E6 square with all his pieces. Knight D4, bishop G4, Queen B5 check, and after bishop D7, white finished the game with a nice queen sacrifice. So can you find it? Not so difficult. Knight E6. Pay attention. Black must accept bishop takes B5. In that case, bishop takes B5 with a check. Knight E7. Knight take G7 check. And later on, knight E6 and the queen is gone. After C6, D takes C6. Same, black's king cannot be saved. Selecting also C7, also C takes B7, also knight takes G7. So black is totally lost. There's no way to survive. Let's say after Queen B6, C takes B7, check and capture on A8 with a decisive material advantage. And one more game I saw, we played between Russian, quite strong grandmaster Evgeny Nair and Berta Harashkina from the Russian Cup 2001. After D4, F5, E4, F takes E4. Knight C3, Knight F6. So here for the first time we can see that Nair played bayonet attack. So pawn move to G4. So white is intending to push G4, G5. Now if black plays H6, then after F3, E takes F3 and bishop D3, black's king already in the very serious danger because bishop G6, unpleasant threat. If black plays E6, after F takes E4, bishop B4 and bishop D3, same idea. So how to stop the E5 or G5 in case of short castling. Once again, black is in big trouble. So one game continuing here, short castling. G5, H take g5, bishop take g5, c5, e5, and white finished the game very fast. So threats e takes f6, threats queen h5 later on. Black's king side is totally damaged. Okay, let's back to the Nair's game. So after g4, his opponent played d5, g5, knight has only one square, knight g8, and f3. So continue the classical way, classical attack. So now in case of e takes f3 and knight takes f3, white's knight is coming to e5, and it's the same idea as queen h5, bishop d3 leaves black's position almost undefendable. e3, black is trying to stop white's attack, but after bishop takes e3, bishop f5, knight e2, knight c6, and knight e4. So we have the same position, but materially even equal. So white is just going to develop the bishop next to d3 and use the weakness on the black's light squares. So e6, g6. So after knight f4, black tried knight b4, bishop b5, c6, bishop a4, covering the c2 pawn. e6, queen e2, ready for long castling. a5, a3, knight a6, bishop b3. So still black cannot capture on g5, never, because knight takes e6 simply. Bishop d6, long castling, queen c7, queen d2. So easy to understand that earlier or later black pawn on e6 would be the decisive factor. So black is trying to start his attack on the queen side, totally missing white's next and brilliant idea. Look at that. Since that black's king is still in the center, white is coming with the sacrificing knight e4, d takes e4, f takes e4. Now if bishop takes e4, then knight takes e6 leads to the huge attack. Then rook comes to e1, and then bishop comes to f4. Black's king in the center cannot be protected. Look at that position. So next idea is bishop f4. Almost impossible to survive. All the problems still, like in the all other gambit lines we were studying, that when your opponent's king is the center, very important for us to bring all our pieces in the game, open files and diagonals for our powerful, already developed pieces, because we have developed an advantage. And combination finish the game usually. So breaking through the center, like in this position, is just finishing your opening. So after knight e4, d takes a4, f takes e4, and bishop g4, white just simply continued e5, keeping the initiative. Knight takes e6. Of course, better was for black here to capture bishop takes c6, but queen d7, knight takes g7, check, king d8, and after d4, d5, totally necked black's king, just not allow any chance to survive. So black resigned. Why? Because after bishop takes d1, White simply could play rook takes d1. Intending d6, intending e6, intending d takes c6. c5 or c takes d5. White simply could continue with the same idea like I said before, d6. Threatening next e6. Queen takes a5, etc. So, very dangerous to play in the Staunton's gambit with your king in the center. And one more game from the Grandmaster practice. Played against Bogdan Lalic and Vlatko Kovacevic in the Croatian Team Championship. d4 f5, e4, f takes e4, knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5, c6, once again f2 f3, ready to sacrifice a pawn, was a much better development. So after d5, bishop d3 and g6, knight e5, black still cannot solve the problems the proper way. White is intending to bring the queen to e2, then long castling, the rook comes to e1 with very strong pressure on the king side. Don't forget that white also coming usually with the attack on the king side after h4 and h5. So black's attempt to stop white's attack by playing queen b6 cannot be so successful, since we play just queen e2, queen takes b2, and short castling. So this is the greatest way to continue our attack. Black's king in the center, so we are intending bishop takes f6 or rook takes f6, and king on e8 will be mated very soon. White is having just destroying black's position very fast. White's great development advantage is a decisive factor here. Look, all white pieces in the game. Doesn't matter this material. So black is having right now 2 pawns up and now could capture the piece like happened after queen takes c3. But after bishop takes f6, it's easy to understand there is no way for black to solve the problem. Rook g8. Queen f2. Now in case of e takes f6 and queen takes f6, there's no way to stop queen f7 with a checkmate. At the same time, white is intending bishop takes e7, breaking the black's position. Knight e7, bishop takes e7, king takes e7, knight takes d7, king takes d7, only move, queen f7 check, bishop e7, queen takes g8, check on d4, king h1 and queen h4. Despite the fact black is having 2 pawns for exchange, the evaluation of position is obvious. White is easily winning here, because black's bishop on c8 and rook on a8 just cannot be invited into the game. After rook e1, white has open files and decisive threats against the black's king. King d6, g3, queen g5, queen e8. There is no way to avoid h4, and black's bishop on e7 is gone. After d4, h4, queen d5 and king h2, Vlatko Kovacevic, despite the fact that the game was played between 2 grandmasters already after 22 moves, black had to call it a day, because there is no way to stop queen takes e7. And the black losing also piece and his king in the mating net, thanks to the great domination of white rooks and destroyed position of the black's king. So this quite recent example from the Grandmaster practice. I would like to finish my lecture about the Staunton's gambit. So you now saw the most important, more useful ideas, how to attack, how to develop your initiative with a pawn sacrifice. What way white is playing usually in such situation. That even in theoretical way, it's not so simple for black to survive white's attack. So, and still, the Staunton's gambit in the Dutch defense is quite serious and quite strong weapon, even today, after more than 150 years, when this e4 move was played for the first time. Thanks everybody for watching. We will continue next week with our gambit guide. So, please still follow me. Bye.